Walker, if we record this podcast, this episode, they will come. Try not to make a joke out of that. Welcome to the Ben and Walker Movie Show. I'm your co-host, Ben Davis, joined by my other co-host, Walker Holt. And we're excited to have a conversation with you about one of our favorite things in the world, acid flashbacks. Have you had many of those, Walker?
No, sure haven't.
Sure haven't. Neither have I. How you doing, man? It's been a
Doing
minute.
good.
How you doing?
Good. It's weather starting to warm up here. We're in the mid 70s now. It's sunny. Tomorrow is my 1 year anniversary. Tomorrow, as in when we're recording on Sunday.
Ooh.
So we got a plan to go back to where we got married, about 30 minutes from here, and spend the night in the same suites that we slept in, during our wedding weekend, and have dinner there and play golf on Tuesday morning and have lunch there and head back. Just a quick little overnight trip, but we're excited about it. How about you? How you been?
That's really sweet. That's really sweet, man. Good. The recording on Sunday, the NFL draft just happened and was completed yesterday, and I spent months on end just obsessively doing mock drafts. Logan, if you're listening to this, I'm sorry for all the mock drafts I sent you. Now that it's over, I'm kind of happy with the Packers and Panthers drafts. I'd give Packers a B-. I'd give Panthers a B- as well. Overall, kind of happy. Some things I like, some things I don't. But other than that, I've been all right.
What do you think Drake May will do in New England?
They surrounded him with a surprising amount of talent in the draft. Jalen Polk and there was another wide receiver. It's the wide receiver from, I think, Central Florida, UCF, I believe. Pretty good dude. I like Drake May a lot. I think, honestly, he's probably going to end up becoming the best pro out of the quarterbacks that were drafted ahead of him. Caleb Williams to me is overrated. I think he is just a taller Kyler Murray. People keep saying he's Patrick Mahomes. He's not. He's taller Kyler Murray. That's all he is. He could end up being good. Maybe I'm just being a Bears hater because I'm a Packers fan, but he's certainly set up to succeed. But I like Drake May a lot. We'll see if the Patriots are able to bring up the talent that they drafted around him, because I think he has all the talent in the world. Plus, he's a UNC guy. You got to pull.
Yes, sir. Very cool.
Yep. So, just a little heads up regarding the content going forward. We will be taking a step back in terms of the sheer amount of content we'll be producing by primarily focusing on deep dives. So fret not. We'll be still doing stuff for you all, and obviously for ourselves, because we love doing this. We'll just be focusing in more on one thing, and hopefully it creates a better product for you all and a more enjoyable experience for us both.
Sounds good. I'm excited. Chapter 3.
Yeah, me too. This is more like phase 5 for me, and phase 3 for us. But today we're going to be talking about and looking back on what many have as a top 10 sports movie of all time, Field of Dreams, which is celebrating its 35th anniversary this month. Last month we hosted a tournament between 4 films on our Instagram page, which is at Ben Davis or Ben and Walker Movie Show. By the way, you should totally go there and follow us. And those 4 films were Field of Dreams, Girl Next Door, Major League, and Say Anything, with it coming down to Field of Dreams versus The Girl Next Door, which I correctly predicted, which was a closer battle than I thought it would be. Well, what are your thoughts on the results? I know we talked about this a couple of weeks ago.
Well, I appreciate it. Thank you all, anyone listening who voted on it. It means a lot to us. I like the engagement.
Absolutely.
I will say I was cheering for Field of Dreams. Not to necessarily say it's my favorite movie of the bunch. That probably comes between that and Major League. I do like Major League a lot. But I just have been kind of meaning to rewatch Field of Dreams for a while. So I kind of wanted that to win. I'm a baseball
Yeah.
guy, so both baseball ones were winning. Were my picks. Say Anything. I've only seen that once. I did like it. Girl Next Door. I've probably seen it, but I don't. If I'm thinking of the right movie, I think I've seen it. But it,
It's where the adult film actress moves next door to the high
yeah,
school
if
kid.
I think I can picture the movie poster in my head, and if that's
It's got Alicia Cuthbert on the front of
yeah,
it,
yeah,
and
yeah,
she's
yeah,
like
I've seen it. Yeah,
posing,
I've definitely seen it.
and Emil Hirsch is just looking on, like,
Yes, I've seen it.
yeah,
I remember.
yeah. That was a heavy rewatch for me back in the day. I was kind of cheering
Mm-hmm.
for that one. I'm not gonna lie. I love the soundtrack. It's one of my favorite movie soundtracks ever. But I haven't seen it in a minute. But it was one that I watched all the time back in the day. I was kind of cheering for that one. I was really surprised though that it handedly beat Say Anything. I thought it would be close, but I thought Girl Next Door would win because it's that is more in line with the demographic that listens to this show. Around that age. I thought it would be closer though because Say Anything's it's a classic. The boombox over
Right.
the head, like that's pretty iconic. But I was even more shocked. I thought Girl Next Door gets steamrolled by
Mm-hmm.
Field of Dreams, and it didn't. It lost by 2 votes. It was never in the lead. There was a couple times where it was tied, but it surprised me. So maybe one day, we'll revisit doing The Girl Next Door. I'm sure that'll be interesting through adult eyes instead of watching it as a teenager and
Yeah,
loving it.
yeah, that'd be fun.
But yeah, I'm pumped that Field of Dreams won because it gave me an excuse to rewatch it because I haven't seen it in a
Me
few
either. Long
years.
time.
Yeah, but Field of Dreams is directed by Phil Alden Robinson and stars Kevin Costner, Amy Madigan, Gabby Hoffman, James Earl Jones, Ray Liotta, and Burt Lancaster. If you aren't familiar with Field of Dreams, the plot synopsis reads like such according to Google. When Iowa farmer Ray hears a mysterious voice one night in a cornfield saying, "If you build it, he will come," he feels the need to act. Despite taunts of lunacy, Ray builds the baseball diamond on his land, supported by his wife, Annie. Afterwards, the ghosts of the great players start to emerge from the crops to play ball, led by shoeless Joe Jackson. But as Ray learns, the Field of Dreams is about much more than bringing former baseball greats out to play. This is the one of the most enduring films of all time. I feel like everyone's constantly quoting it, talking about it. Like I said earlier, it's widely recognized as one of the greatest sports films ever made as well. And in fact, it landed 3 Oscar nominations for the year 1989 for Best Original Score, Best Adapted Screenplay, and Best Picture. And that's back when there was only 5 nominations, too. But I'd argue that while it's certainly a celebration of baseball, like much great sports films, it's about much more than that, as the plot synopsis would suggest. It's much more of a father son movie to me than anything else. Walker, when was the first time you saw Field of Dreams, and where do you stand on that debate? Do you fall on the side that it's a sports film, or do you think it's more of a father son
Well,
movie?
that's exactly what I had prepared to say. It I mean, I saw it when I was a kid. I'd seen it a couple times when I was a kid. I mean, it was one of my dad's favorites. I'm sure it was a lot of our dad's favorites. It
Yeah,
was always in the movie drawer. I can remember the cover very well, and I lumped it in a lot with the 7 or 8 other Kevin Costner baseball movies that feels like he's in a million of them between Bull Durham and Love of the Game and
Bull Durham, love of the game. Yeah, he did a crap ton of baseball movies, and this kind of like what caught him on, like kind of his heater back in the to use a
yeah.
baseball term during the late '80s, early
Yeah,
'90s.
and so when I was younger, I was obsessed with baseball throughout high school, and it was a baseball movie to me at the time. I was young. I loved baseball. I liked anything I could get with it. I liked learning about baseball history and the the 1919 Black Sox, and liked anything that would talk about baseball. And so it was a baseball movie to me. But rewatching it this weekend for the first time in a while, it's far more a movie about father and son than it is baseball. That's, to me. I mean, it's much more that's the point of the movie. And baseball is just kind of a vehicle that tells the story.
And that's kind of, to me, what makes a great sports film is sports is the backdrop, but the story is something different, right? Like, so the Rocky One in
Yeah,
particular, that's really a romance movie.
it's good. Good
That's really what
sequel.
that is, and sports is used as the backdrop. The Way Back is a story of, which is Ben Affleck film, is a story of trauma and overcoming the trauma
Mm-hmm.
of an addiction. Right? It's Hoosiers, similar situation
Yeah.
with that. Right? Warrior. It's a movie about a broken family and them trying to get over the trauma of the past and rekindling that closeness and coming together. And it, literally the battle in the octagon reflecting the battle emotionally that they're going through. That's and freaking Remember the Titans is a movie about race
Mm-hmm.
relations.
Yeah. All those great.
So like all those great sports movies, they're really about something different. And sports is just the backdrop. Because sports is great real life drama.
Sure.
Right? We all get caught up in it. I just talked about the draft and how obsessed I was with it because I love my Carolina Panthers. I love my Green Bay Packers. I want them to do well. And I get really, really invested in it. The great real life drama and the greatest sports movies are always about something different. And then the sports is the backdrop. This obviously is a celebration of baseball and the nostalgia that comes with baseball and how it's passed down from father to son, sons, and all that. But it's really the story of a father and son's broken relationship and someone getting a second chance to rekindle that. A story about faith as well and believing in that gut feeling. But also, it's a story of father and sons, which touched me
Mhm.
deeply. Like, I haven't watched this movie since probably the spring of like 2004. I remember watching it with my dad, and it never made its way onto like the sports
Sure.
rotation in with sports movie rotation with my family. Like, we had a couple movies that we watched. Obviously, the Rocky films, Hoosiers, Remember the Titans, and Miracle kind of found its way
Mhm.
onto that list as well of sports movies that we would rewatch. But I think that the reason being is because my dad wasn't really a baseball guy. He would watch baseball during like the
Yeah.
playoffs, but he wasn't really a huge baseball guy, and it wasn't something that I was interested in as a sport. I was much more basketball, football,
Hmm.
wrestling oriented. But I remember liking it. I haven't seen it since, and then watching it now, dude.
Yeah.
I- when you get to the end, like I
Yeah.
was sobbing. Like it touched me deeply because, for those of you who aren't aware, like I lost my father in December of 2020, and one of my greatest like regrets. And it's not really a regret because I can't control it, but my dad never got to meet my daughter, and it's like, man, that really sucks. That really, really sucks. And then at the end of this movie, when his father comes over and gets to meet the daughter, I was just
Yeah.
like just bawling. It's a very, very good movie, and I understand why so many people love it, and why it got the Best Picture nomination, and why it's become like the sport of baseball, passed down from father to sons. This has become a movie that has passed down from fathers to sons. It's like a really great father son movie.
Yes. I mean, it absolutely is. I mean, I'm singing it the entire time watching it. I fortunately don't have the exact same connection to it you do, but I still, it hit me very hard, and you know, I was emotional at the end of the movie too. I mean, for a couple different parts, a couple different reasons, and we'll get into it.
Yeah, for sure. But it, like I said, it resonated with a lot of people. The Rotten Tomato score still sits at 88%, with the consensus being Field of Dreams is a sentimental, but is sentimental, but in the best way. It's a mix of fairy tale, baseball, and family togetherness. Yeah, I agree. I think this movie is really sentimental, and I think I hate it when people say things like, "Oh, they don't make movies like this anymore," but they really don't make movies that are this earnest and sentimental
Yeah,
anymore. They really don't. There's always some kind
edge
of
to it.
like cattiness or snarkiness or edge to it, and this ain't that. It's really like wholesome and earnest and sweet. It's a sweet movie. And I think we need more movies like that. I think that's why, like, you know, completely different genre, but Sam Raimi's Spider-Man films, people love them so much is because they are so earnest and
Yeah,
sentimental. Um,
I agree with the
and,
Rotten Tomatoes score. I'm very close to. I mean, after watching it last night, I ended up on an 85 out of 100, which is right there in the world. I like it a lot. I mean, there was a lot that went. I mean, there,
I'd be at like a 90,
yeah,
95
there was a
for
couple
me.
parts of the just in terms of the screenplay that this conversation that we're having may iron it out and may raise my score a little bit. There was just a couple spots that I wasn't sure if it was necessary or if it was exactly. I think I didn't understand one or two parts of it that we'll get into, I think, a little later. But obviously it's a movie about you. I mean, you got to suspend the disbelief a little bit, and when you do, magic
Yeah.
happens literally, and it can make you feel amazing. But there was just a couple parts of the screenplay that took it off that top tier elite. But still, I mean, 85 out of 100 is an excellent score. It's a must see. It's a classic for a reason.
Yeah, completely agree. I will also add that like it has 65
Hmm.
reviews on Rotten Tomatoes. So it's one of those older films that doesn't have as many reviews for it. I'm sure if it did, it probably would be
I would think so.
higher.
I've really never heard bad things about
I,
it. I think in general. I mean, maybe I haven't heard a lot about it critically. Sports movies almost get and I know we've talked about whether it's a sports movie or not, and this is a particularly favored sports movie, quote unquote. But sports movies in general seem to just get a small they're on their own scale, kind of sometimes. You know what I mean? Like when you talk about sports movies, you're I
yeah,
guess in general, a lot of them just aren't quite as good of just films, and you're like, well,
yeah.
on the sports movie scale, it's great, and I don't think that about this movie, but
Well, it's like superhero movies. Oh, for a superhero movie,
yeah,
it's great. It's a great
sure.
movie is a great movie regardless of the
Mhm.
genre. I just think much like the best movies of any genre, they use like whatever story they're telling, like a baseball movie, and they make it some like we talked about earlier. They make it about something
I,
more. Baseball's the
sure. I
backdrop.
think. I think part of it can be too that people love sports so much, whether it's their sport or a new sport or a sport in their family, that even a not very good sports movie can be quite entertaining. Like you can get in. I mean, Vision
Yeah,
Quest. We've talked about that before. I mean, it's not a very good movie, but I mean, we love wrestling. It's
no,
authentic, and it's a blast to watch.
and maybe one day our audience will get to
Yeah.
hear it. We recorded a full pod on it, and we can't. It's lost. It's lost to the internet. We tried to do it again, and it just didn't work out. We will eventually have to do that one again because that pod will
I'm
be
trying to
really
think
fun.
of what's his buddy, the guy who spreads his rumors, and he's like, I'm part Cherokee. I feel like he talks about some sort of gods or something, and I wish I could remember it, and I'd be like, they just don't want the pod to air. Forgot like all his like mythology stuff that he talks about. I smoked the peace pipe last night.
Jesus. Yeah, that. God, yeah. God, that movie is terrible, but also awesome. But yeah, I think sports movies, no matter what, can be entertaining.
I agree.
But let's get into some fun facts here, man. The line, "Hey Dad, want to have a catch," originally didn't include dad. Audiences were disappointed at the lack of acknowledgement of the father son, and word dad was looped in post
It's a big
production.
move.
Thank God. That is a
I
move
mean,
that
it's
paid
like it's
off.
one of the biggest words of the movie.
You have to do that. If you don't have dad, it's
Yeah.
like that lack of
Yeah, I didn't
acknowledgement,
mind the lack of
right? And it's
acknowledgement before
become
that with like his daughter and stuff like that, and him just introducing him as John. I didn't mind it at that point, but then it kind of made the dad even better. Like it made the dad more like no God type of
dude, again, I was like that whole last stretch, I was
Me too.
just a puddle of tears, man. Puddle of tears. It was like Iron Claw, but a little worse. It's just after the filming was completed, the family that owned the farm kept the field and added a small hut with inexpensive souvenirs for sale. As of 2018, visitors were free to come to the field and play baseball as they please between April and November. And I'm pretty sure my father-in-law went to
So
that
they,
field.
they're playing a game there every year too,
Mm-hmm.
right? An MLB game. I think they're
I
playing
think
like
I,
a it's called the Field of Dreams game.
I
Yeah.
don't know. I don't
Yeah,
follow
I'm
baseball
pretty
enough,
sure they've made it into.
so I could not tell you.
Yeah, I mean they're playing MLB at Field of Dreams, and it's a regular season game. Every year now that they're doing it in 20, or they did it in 21 and 22. It was the White Sox against the Yankees and the Cubs against the Reds the next year. Maybe they've stopped doing it, but it's really cool that they're doing it. They added stands and stuff around it. They carved into the
That's
corn. They carved like signs, like crop circles, but it's the team logos. Yeah, they're
that's
doing
really
like
cool, man.
fighter jets flying over. I mean, yeah, it seems awesome. I'd love to go. I remember my dad was real interested in it. Obviously, he liked the movie, and when I went to the Cubs game in 2022, the year the Cubs played there, and
Yeah,
I went to a Cubs game, and in their gift shop they had baseballs, like souvenir baseballs with like the corn on it. I think it was just like a logo that they had come up with, and I got one from my dad there. Yeah, it's really neat. It's cool that they do it.
that's really cool. I'm pretty sure though that my father-in-law went there. I'll have to ask him, but I'm pretty sure he did. Didn't go to those games, I don't think, but I think he
Yeah.
visited. Um, I think my sister-in-law Heather took him. I'll have to ask. After the movie was completed, test audiences didn't like the original film's title, "Shoeless Joe Jackson," because they said it sounded like a homeless person. Universal called director and screenwriter Phil Alden Robinson to tell him that Shoeless Joe didn't work, and the studio changed the title to Field of Dreams. When Robinson heard the news of the change, he called W.P. Kinsella, the author of the book, and told him the quote bad news. But apparently he didn't care, saying that Shoeless Joe was the title the publishing company gave the book. Kinsella's original title was Dreamfield, so it's very close.
Yeah, I hate the title Shoeless
So
Joe.
it really worked.
It sounds
Yeah, I
like
don't
a
like
Shoeless
that. That
Joe
doesn't
movie.
work. It doesn't.
I mean, I know Shoeless Joe's
And it's
it's
not
not
a
at all. I
shoeless
mean,
show. It's not a
I mean, I
show.
know
Yeah.
he's a major character, but it's also it sounds like a biopic.
He, right? It sounds like it's about him, but it's not. he is a central figure, but he's not the central figure. It's not the theme of the story. It's not what they're exploring.
Yeah.
Change the title. I completely get that. Wanting to change that. And I don't like the title either. The movie's line, "If you build it, he will come," was voted as the number 39 movie quote by American Film Institute, which is AFI, out of
I
100.
agree. Yeah,
I get it.
I mean,
Yeah.
I'd say most people know what you're talking about when you say it, and I'd say people say it. I'd say I hear people say
Often.
it in the wild at least once a year.
In the wild. I hear it a
And
little
maybe I
bit
do.
more than that.
I mean, it's definitely. I mean,
Yeah.
for sure, great quote.
Yeah. Well, yeah, it deserves that. I'll actually have to take a look at that list and see what's on there. I wonder what number one is. Is it "No, I am your
God,
father"? Maybe,
that's got to be high.
which is often
Yeah, something
misquoted.
from Godfather, like he sleeps with the fishes, or I'm making my deal you can't refuse, or one of those. Those are popular.
Yeah,
I don't know. It'd be an interesting list to look at one
there's
day.
"Yo, Adrian, I did it." Yeah, I'll have to look back. Ray Liotta had no baseball experiences and batted right-handed, although shoeless Joe Jackson was a lefty. Phil Alden Robinson allowed Liotta to bat with his right, but still put him through several weeks of extensive training with the University of Southern California's baseball coach and former Brooklyn Dodger Rod Dudek. How do you say that? Dedu?
Mm,
Dedu?
ditto. I
I
don't
don't know.
know.
In order to be convincing as one of the sport's greatest hitters, Liotta did attempt to play as the real Jackson did, batting lefty, throwing righty, but the reverse of both was so much more natural for him, and he eventually developed a good swing. The scene where he hits the line drive straight to Kevin Costner actually happened. Costner's fall on the mound was real, and although it was a surprise, he stayed in character. I will say this about Leota's swing: it's a little stiff.
Well,
And I say that as someone whose swing is stiff, only having played slow pitch softball for a church league, and it being hilarious seeing me swing at a slow pitch softball and whiff it or just
yeah.
bunt it.
Couple things. Number one, I would say, and maybe I'm biased. I think baseball. Movie athletes are tough a lot of the time. I mean, it's a tough look a lot of times. They don't. It doesn't shine through naturally, and for several reasons. Number one, they
Yeah, you can always tell when someone is like in a
yeah
football movie and they like throw the football. It's like
yeah,
yeah, instead of you know
and for several reasons. Some are that the actor may just not be an athlete, may not have experience with it. But the other thing being, I do think sometimes they're in really awkward positions where, like, because of the cameras and stuff like that, like they're not literally like playing catch with someone. Like he's in a place like throwing a ball and he's got 4 feet in front of him that he can throw the ball, but he has to make it look like he's throwing it 50
yeah.
feet. And it's very like it's just hard to do it. So I'll say that. But I noticed immediately that Ray Liotta was playing in the field lefty and batting righty, and I was like, really? That because that's rare too. I mean,
Yeah.
I've met several people in that I've played baseball with through the years that throw righty and bat lefty like the real Shoeless Joe did. That's very common for some reason. I mean, not very common, but I know many guys who've done it. It's rare to see it the other way. And I was like, I wonder if he did that on purpose because Shoeless Joe did that. And I looked it up and I realized Shoeless Joe was the opposite. And I was like, that's an interesting thought.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't have much to say about it, but it was interesting and I noticed it. And in terms of his swing, I think baseball is probably one of the harder ones to look natural on. If you don't know how to play baseball or throwing or hitting, I think it's tough. And
Well, the great thing about baseball, the sport of baseball, is that anyone can do it. You don't have to be an insane athlete to
Mhm.
do it. It's all
Yeah.
technique.
Yeah, and which makes it hard to look natural. I mean and they
Yeah.
found Kevin Costner who can do it naturally, so that's why he's in all the baseball movies. But Ray Liotta, I mean, due to a little magic camera work, I gave him a pass. I thought he looked all right. I mean, he He's
So,
also playing with a
do you know
1920s
his?
glove out there catching pop flies, which is pretty. I don't know if I could do that.
Yeah. Well, did you read up on like what his feelings on
Ray
this movie?
Liotta's.
Ray Liotta. Yeah. Apparently, he doesn't really get it. He's like,
He looks the whole movie. He looks kind of like
I
he just kind of looks like
don't.
I don't know.
He doesn't really get it. He's really
Yeah,
good in
and
the movie.
his character the whole time
Apparently, he
also is
just.
like they're like, "Are you real?" He's like, "I don't know. Where'd you come from? I don't know. Where are we all? I don't know what's going on." It's like we can't answer that question. We don't
I
have
don't
an
know
answer
how.
for it.
I don't know how I got here. Yeah, I don't know what to do with my
Where are you
hands.
going? We're just going. You're not
Yeah,
invited.
you're not invited. You're not invited, right? Yeah. At first, James Horner was unaware if he could work on the film due to scheduling restrictions. Then he watched a rough cut and was so moved he accepted the job of the scoring of the film, and it paid off. I think the score for this movie is wonderful, especially when you have that like
Yeah,
crescendo
that's
at the
great.
end. I think that is the bee's knees. James Horner is one of the greatest composers of all time, and I love his little. I love it when you can tell a composer by a beat that they do consistently in their scores.
Mm-hmm.
Like Hans Zimmer with the loud, like boisterous, like beats,
Right.
right? That are, but then with him, it's these little like I can't make the noise, but it sounds similar to like some of the beats he would do in Avatar.
Yeah.
Like that
Yeah.
spiritual, almost that spiritual sound. You know what
Uh-huh.
I'm talking about? That comes through. Yeah, like I dug that a lot. James Earl Jones decided to do the film after his wife read the script and became mesmerized by Mann's "People Will Come" speech. Both they had concerns that the scene would be cut from the final film. Glad it wasn't. It's one of the best moments of the movie.
Yeah, and it's a great moment for him to shine too. He has a couple moments that he shines pretty well, but that was obviously a monologue,
Yeah,
but
it
showcases.
always is so shocking to me because I'm such a big Star Wars
Mhm.
fan to see James Earl Jones like actually act because he's a great
Yeah,
actor.
I had the same feeling because every time you see him, you're you're trying to find the one person in the planet that doesn't know, like, hey, that's Darth Vader and Mufasa, right? Like, that's and everyone's like, yes, I know that. But then watching it, and I hadn't seen Sandlot in a while, but watching him in this, there was some moments like in the apartment, especially when Ray goes to find him, and
Yeah.
he's kind of being sarcastic a lot and like opening his eyes big and like getting emoting a lot more than normal. I don't know. He's always so stoic in everything I see or hear him in. He's always so like just serious and deep voiced and everything. But then like when
Hmm.
he's being kind of funny at some points, it was cool to see. It's good.
It really works. It really works. Speaking of voices, the voice credited simply as himself and the identity of the actor who provided it remains unknown. W.P. Kinsella said he believes the voice was Ed Harris, the real life husband of Amy Madigan. Others have speculated the voice was performed by Ray Liotta, Timothy Busfield, or Kevin Costner.
Yeah, I was wondering about it the whole time, and then when Ray Liotta was kind of like, "No, it was you, Ray," I was like, "Oh, maybe it was Kevin Costner's voice." That's what I was thinking the whole time. But Ed Harris, is that Ed Harris from like from like Westworld? Ed Harris, is that okay?
Yeah, Ed Harris from.
Truman Show and The Abyss,
Yep, yep. That Abyss came
The
out this
Rock.
year too. Yeah, great actor Ed Harris. I just watched The Abyss. Forgot how great that movie is. God, that movie's such a banger,
I've never seen it.
and he's really good in it. What?
Mm-mm.
Okay, you need to go on my Voodoo and you need to watch it this afternoon if you're not busy.
I'll watch it.
Watch the extended cut. Click on the special features and you'll see the extended version. Watch that one. It's almost 3 hours, but it's spectacular.
I'll watch it.
According to Phil Allen Robinson, Kevin Costner was the studio's first choice for the part of Ray, but having just starred in Bull Durham, they didn't think he wanted to do a Second Street baseball movie. Ultimately, one studio executive slipped the script to Costner, who immediately expressed interest in the film.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting to see this play out. I couldn't remember if Bull Durham was first or second. I know they were very close.
Bull Durham was first, and then it was this one, and then you have what it isn't. Is it? It's not. Is it For the Love of the Game?
He's pitching a perfect game the whole time.
Yeah, and it's directed by Sam Raimi.
Is it? I don't even know that.
I think so. I think it's directed by Sam Raimi.
God, Major League came out in 1989 too. Well, I guess that was on the list. Yeah,
that's
that was
why
on the list. But I mean, Bull Durham, Major League, and this back to back to back is crazy.
Sandlot. Well, like baseball movies, I think to me, like watching baseball in real life can be somewhat boring.
Well, you mean on TV or in real life? Well, either way. I mean,
on TV. In person, it's great, but on TV, it can be somewhat disengaging. But I think the reason baseball translates so well to the big screen is because it's much like a movie. You're building towards something, and then an explosion happens, and it's very exciting. And I think that's why baseball movies work so well, is because baseball is kind of like a movie. It works narratively.
Yeah, I agree.
But it's crazy to me that Kevin Costner is like the go-to baseball guy.
That's funny.
It works. He's awesome in them.
Yeah, and open frontier Western movies. He's great. England, I mean, whatever it's called, like conquering the Western frontier feels like that's a big thing. And then keeping it up with Yellowstone.
Yeah, you have, what is it?
Yeah, Dances with Wolves, and then you got
Dances with Wolves, Best Picture winner.
That's like a 2-part event,
Horizon,
which is an interesting concept. And then Yellowstone in general, the show is kind of got some history on
Open Range.
Yeah, you can tell he definitely
a good one.
I assume has some interest and sticks with him. And then not even baseball, I mean sports in general. I mean, he did Draft Day, he does 10 Cup, he did I'm sure there's more out there I can't remember, but
10 Cup is a good one.
I want to watch 10 Cup golf again. I haven't seen it in a long time.
Yeah, you're going through your golf phase. Yeah. All right, man. Well, let's go ahead and dive into our awards, man. First up, we got Best Scenes and Moments. Ray's real life story.
I love this.
Not real life story,
just
life story.
The opening, it was just really well done. Also, immediately set the vibe. I mean, very 1980s. Like I loved the home video footage and of like buying the house. Kevin Costner looked cool. It wasn't overly long or overly explained. It just kind of set the tone for what we needed to know going forward, and I liked it a lot. I thought it was well done.
Yeah, I completely agree. Like it just, like you said, it sets the tone perfectly, and it gives all the information we need to know about this character, so the movie can jump right into our second scene here, which is the "if you build it, he will come."
Yeah, we really get kicked off right there.
Like the movie jumps right into.
I like it.
Like I love that. Like sets it up, tees you up. It to use a baseball term, it just lofts one to you.
Yeah.
You know, just lofts it to you, and it just knocks it out of the park. Like it just really does a phenomenal job. Ray tells Annie about his fears while discussing the possibility of him actually building this field.
Yeah,
I think
it's a nice vulnerable moment that I imagine a lot of guys, kind of a lot of people feel, especially when they start creeping on 40 and creeping on the middle of their lives and being scared about what they are becoming and what they're not becoming.
Yeah, we fear be- becoming our parents, right?
Yeah.
And I think that's a very real fear. And also, we'll get into it more. She's the most supportive wife probably
Oh yeah.
ever. Like dear God.
Yeah.
And to me, like him opening up about his vulnerability like that, I think she sees it as, okay, my husband is feeling some type of way about his relationship with his father. He's having some trouble coming to terms with that, not really getting a chance to say goodbye, not really get a chance to make amends. If he needs to do this to get over it, or not to get over it, but to be,
Closure.
you know, get some
Mm-hmm.
closure from it, then do it. And I think that's how she views it. And I think it captures it without having to spell it out for you.
Yes, I agree.
I think it's a very well done moment to not only let you in on, Ray's complex feelings, but Annie as a character as well, and their
I agree.
relationship. Ray meets Shoeless Joe.
Yeah, it's funny how they do this. It's so quiet and slow at this point, and they just kind of they see it happening, and they're not sure whether they believe it or not.
Well, there's a time passage, right? Because you see like the snow on the baseball field.
It's interesting. I mean, and it's also funny. This reminded me of it with the opening that they. I always think it's interesting when they take like Shoeless Joe's baseball card, but they make it Ray Liotta. Because they did it in this great way that was like, you know how old baseball cards looked like that wasn't that clear of a picture, kind of blurry and like stamped on, and it looked like that. And it was like, God, it does look like Ray Liotta. I was like, that's just Ray Liotta. That's not. I googled Shoeless Joe. I was like, that's not him. That's just Ray Liotta. But I like when they do that.
Yeah, I do too. I love how starstruck.
Yeah.
Ray.
Yeah, I
is
love
here.
the fungo
He's
part
just
where he picks up the bat and is going to hit him fly balls, and he just kind of chunks it to the ground, and he's like, "I'll get one to you," and then he hits the second. It's funny, and obviously the BP is great.
Yeah. Town hall banning books.
Yeah,
I like this scene because once again, it lets you in on Annie as a character. She's very like free flowing, and it also kind of perfectly sets up the introduction of Terrence Mann and what he adds to the story and the banning of his books in this kind of small town, right? They very protective and everything like that. They want to be controlling.
gives Annie a chance to
I think it's a
shine
good
too.
setup. Yeah,
She's funny in that scene.
I like that. My favorite part is Ray just sitting there scribbling madly. Bring him close. What is it? It's
Eases
like
pain.
Yeah, eases pain. Yeah. And she's like smacks him and he just like raises his hand.
Yeah, I like when the woman standing up's like talking shit about him the whole time, and he's like, "Hey, okay." He's like, "This is more important."
Yeah, like I don't give it.
I couldn't care less.
Yeah. Yeah. I have more lint at the top of my ass crack. Or I care more about the lint at the top of my ass crack than I care about your opinion of me. Yeah. I think it's quite funny. Moment. 2 hot dogs and 2 beers were $10 in 1989.
$35 now.
Yeah.
Maybe more.
Insane.
Maybe more. Maybe 40.
Insane. Because a
It's
beer
it's
is
probably
what, $15 and stuff
now,
like
maybe
that.
even 18. Well, what they do now, I mean, they're expensive anyway, but now they're like, but we're giving you a double beer, like a 16 or a 24 ounce. And it's like, so it's $21. You're just, okay. It's nutty.
Yeah, it's ridiculous, but it was something I enjoyed. Me and Carly were watching it. We both went, that would have been nice. Yeah, can we have those prices now? Yeah. No. Terrence decides to go on a journey with Ray.
Yeah, I liked it. I also like sometimes like you know how like there's always got to be some sort of I don't even know how I'm going to say this. There's always got to be some sort of like obstacle to overcome, and obviously Terrence Mann did not want to go anywhere with
Yeah.
him and like fought him on it for a bit. If that can like if he had done that, if I'm glad that I love the shot of doing the U-turn and him just standing there and being like,
Yeah.
does he say
Well,
Archie?
it's very ghostly
Yeah.
how he does that.
I'm glad that he ended up going and didn't. It didn't have to be like from that point on. He seemed fully invested. He didn't need to be like drugged by his arm.
Well, he's kind of in denial, right? That he also
Yeah.
heard the voice and saw the thing on the screen as
Right.
well. Which we can get into the litigations of him being a ghost or not later, but I think he was bringing him to that baseball field for a reason. Ray talks about the bad thing he said to his father. Again, the movie is about fathers and sons, and it uses baseball as like the backdrop of it. And this movie is about getting closure with with your father, and the regret of not mending fences, because you never know what life will bring to you. And it's pretty clear that that has affected him in his life, that he was close with his father. He lost his mother, was close with his father, and then, became combative with his father, and they never made amends. And you could tell that it rests on him pretty hard.
Yeah. It's also good exposition to kind of remind you about his feelings, and then
Yeah.
but a nice, not overdone, but a nice small amount of misdirection with the like. So you're at a, I mean, your job, your role here is to bring back his hero. I don't know. It kind of like it allows that final scene to retain its punch. You know.
Yeah. Your job here is to get closure with your
Yeah.
father. It's nice. Terrence's speech: "If you build it, they will come."
Yeah. It's this is one of the things. So I mean, I think it's well performed. I think it's well written. I'm just feel like Mark. I guess I don't 100% get that part. You know, like the two things about this movie that I don't 100% understand are people coming. You know what I mean? And people like they'll come, they'll spend money, they'll say. I mean, what are they going to watch? What are they? Does that mean people are going to be believers and they're going to be able to see the players out there? I just don't like quite get it. And maybe I'm thinking too much into it, and that's not the point.
So, do you want to get into it right now? Like the So I think that you have to be open to the
Uh huh.
possibility. And as long as you're open to the possibility of seeing this, then you can see it. But if not, then you can't see it. And I think that Mark thinks that this is insane, which any normal, rational person would
Right.
believe.
But I'm just, I mean, so
But
I guess I don't understand Terrence. I don't know. Let's get into it a little later. Let's get into it after the in the next section of the awards that we can
okay, okay,
discuss. But it was a powerful speech. It was a great monologue, great performance. Written.
powerful and moving.
Yeah, and it good score
Yeah,
behind it. I mean, it they created a tension of like, and Kevin Costner without saying a word through the entire thing, and Mark just chirping in his ear the whole time while Terrence.
I have some feelings on Mark.
Yeah. Well, Mark's chirping in his ear the whole time while Terrence is going on his monologue, and Kevin Costner's not saying a word, and still his performance is pretty great because you can tell he's like, this is bananas, like this is insane what I'm considering
Yeah,
doing, and I think I'm gonna do it. Like you can just tell, like he's like, I mean, he's going through his mind like this is so dumb, but I've trusted this gut this entire way up to now, so like I feel like I got to do it, and
yeah. Got to follow through with the swing.
yeah.
Doc saves Karen,
I love this scene. I love this scene.
which, as I was watching it, did make it did make me chuckle a little bit to myself because I was thinking of John Mulaney at the Oscars.
That's funny.
But it's also it's a fantastic moment because it's Doc, was it
Yeah,
Moonlight?
Archie Moonlight Graham.
Yeah, Archie Moonlight. He gets to have his moment as a younger version of himself, kind of gets to repeat it, but he decides to save the kid, which is ultimately what he decided to do anyway. He decided to become a doctor.
Right.
And he had no regrets. Because that's his whole speech to Ray is like, yeah, I didn't, I got close, but had I become a baseball player, I would not have been a doctor and I would not have saved as many people as I saved and been able to help as many people as I helped. Things happen for a reason. And it's looking back at his past with no regret, as opposed to Ray, who is looking back on his past with regret. And it's a great juxtaposition that they're in, and then him making that choice yet again.
I loved it. I mean, it's
It's
very
powerful.
powerful. I mean, this is what really started the tears for me. Just I mean, all three just perform it so well. I mean, it's just great. And like the guy they got to play old Dr. Graham is just such a
Mm-hmm.
magical, like he's almost like a Santa Claus type figure. Like he's just like this he just gives off like happy vibes, you know what I mean? Like he's just good old boy.
Well, it's Burt Lancaster. Then I think this was his last
Was it?
film. Yeah,
It was really that was a big moment for me.
yeah. I have some thoughts on some people in that scene that I will we will litigate later, but that scene in itself was wonderful. And of course, if you build it, he will come. That eureka moment, and hey, Dad, want to have a catch? Like from that moment on, I was like a puddle.
Yeah.
Just I, and I just it hit so close to home, and I was like, it was so incredibly emotional because you hear it. It's one thing to hear like because I knew the ending of the movie what it was, but it's a different thing to see it,
Mhm.
and to see it after watching the movie, I felt it. I felt it really hard. Like it got me really good. And it, you know, the beautiful thing about movies is, how we relate to them. And stuff like this I find to be, you know, I don't want to speak for everybody else, but stuff like involving, the death of fathers and trying to reconnect with your father and stuff like that. They also help me and bring me some closure as well. And getting to see how this scene was performed was quite beautiful. I loved it. Spoiler alert: it's my favorite scene in the movie.
Yeah, it obviously is an enormous scene. I mean, it's fantastic. It
Yeah.
could possibly be my favorite scene. It's definitely top two for me personally. I mean, the it's an amazing, it's a beautiful scene. But really, I mean, the doc saves Karen when he steps across. Just the whole like that was just such a cool bit of writing to me. Like I loved the how it all kind of tied together in that moment, and it also kind of jump started the tone because it's right before the dad part, and like it just kind of primes up
Yeah.
your tear ducts for that part. And I really just liked it. I liked young Archie. It just made me feel good. They got a guy who is such a boyish. I forgot his name. I know he's in a bunch of stuff. The guy who plays young Archie, but he had such a Frank Whaley, like a young boyish vibe to him that seemed so innocent, and he tried. And another interesting thing, so Archie went one game played, zero at bats. That's what the stat was on the board at Fenway, and
Hmm.
and I don't mean to look too much into this, but it just being baseball-y, it caught my attention. I wonder if this was intentional or not. His wish was to have an at bat with a again, a major league at bat or whatever, and then it all like ties together. But
Mm-hmm.
in his at bat, he has a sacrifice fly, a fly ball that the runner on third tied up and ran in and scored, and so he got the RBI. In baseball, in your stats, that does not count as an at bat. So if I go up to the plate twice, and the first time I hit a home run, and the second time I hit a sacrifice fly, I'm 1 for 1 on the day. It just doesn't count. It doesn't count as an out. It doesn't count as a hit. So technically, he's still 0 at bats. And I wonder if
It's definitely done on purpose because he ends up sacrificing himself, his dream yet again for a greater cause.
yeah.
He does it twice. He does it 3 times. He did it in his real life. He did it in his game, and he did it once again to help the little
Yeah,
girl.
and maybe I'm just being a nerd about it. That felt like oh, that's deep. That's like an Eminem lyric. That's in there. I love that. I thought that was great. I loved the step over. I loved the realization that you can't go back. I loved his being okay with it. I love the looks they shared. After his at bat and
You were
yeah,
great,
yeah,
or
yeah.
you were
You
good.
were great. Like
And
with Shoeless, but then I also love young Archie sitting down on the bench after his at bat or his plate appearance and looking over at Kevin Costner and them kind of sharing a moment of like acknowledgement. And I don't know, it's just great. Like it gives you chills talking about it, and it did watching the movie too. And I knew pretty much how it ended, but I mean, it had been several years since I'd seen it, so I didn't remember the exact order of events and things. And having this was really nice, and it felt like a climax to me. Like it felt like the movie could have ended after that point, in my opinion, and wouldn't have been a bad movie. And then they just made it so much better by the last scene of actual, with his dad, and that I mean the last 25 minutes is really great to me.
the whole last 25 minutes is fantastic. If you want to include it as one scene, we can. But I just think there it's closure for one character. It's closure for two different characters for or three really if you include Terrence Mann and
Yeah,
him being invited.
yeah,
Yeah. I think it's the ending is quite great. I just think that, the realization of him, if you build it, he will come. You've been doing all of this to ease his pain, is easing your father's pain as well as your own, of your regret of not getting closure with your father, from pushing him away and regretting
yeah.
it, and him not meeting your daughter and that regret, because that's something you can't control, and how awful of a feeling that is. And then it happening. Like, yeah, God, the more I talk about it, I'm going to end up crying on the pod. I don't think people want to talk. I don't think people want to
It's
hear it.
very it's very
So,
powerful. It's beautifully done, and I'm I imagine it'll be a special movie for anybody, but especially fathers and sons forever.
absolutely. Absolutely. Moving on to worst scenes and moments. I, I didn't really have any,
Yeah.
man. Like, this movie has some questions, and we'll
Right.
get to those. But it's such a straightforward, line drive that
Yeah, almost
it's
no wasted
there's
time. And
not.
no, I mean it's just almost no wasted
Yeah,
lines. Just
no,
intentional, a journey, and that's what it's about. I mean, the
yeah,
first words of the movie, if he build it, he will come.
no. It's
Well, yeah,
Kevin
I
Costner's
meant after
voiceover.
that, once we're in present day.
Yeah, that's
Yeah,
the first
okay.
line. Yeah,
Yeah, great.
it's a rarity for us to get the worst scenes and moments, but it has happened before where there's nothing
Oh yeah.
there. And we don't like to force things on this pod. Be
Yeah.
nitpicky. Best performance, I think it's James Earl Jones.
Yeah, I think
I think he's
I mean,
wonderful in
I
this.
think I do too. I think I do too. I mean, I thought Kevin Costner was good in it too. I mean, I liked both their performances. But I think I agree.
Yeah, everyone's
I
really good
think
in
I'm
that.
gonna go James Earl Jones for best performance.
Yeah. All right, getting into Does This Make Sense award. So Ray says he hears voices, and Annie is just like okay with this. Like she's not questioning it. She's just like, all right,
Yeah, they seem
fine.
to just have a great relationship, and they make that very clear from the get go.
Well, they're children of the '60s, so like they seem to be like free spirits and
Yeah,
like
and it's interesting what she can see and what she can't see. Why can't she hear the voice? Did she ever end up hearing the voice?
no,
But she was a believer and she could always
but
see. And
she's
that's interesting. There's just so. I mean,
yeah.
maybe I just need to.
Well, I think the voice was particular to him. I also think that Terrence Mann heard it because he's dead, and Kevin Costner needed to pick up his spirit and take it halfway across the country so he could be at peace.
Okay, I don't think I
And I think
realized that.
that's why I think that's why he heard it.
Okay.
We'll get into more of the Terrence Mann is
Okay.
he dead later, but Ray tells everyone in town that he's hearing voices. This seems very cavalier. He seems like very cavalier about all this. Hey man, do you hear voices when you when you crop when you,
Yeah.
you're tending to your crop? Like, I don't think I'd be going around
Yeah.
saying that to people.
I think he has a realization though, and he's like a little embarrassed. He's like, "No, I'm not. No, I'm not. I just need some 3-in-1
Yeah,
oil. I'm just hearing like
it's just a dumb
squeaking on my
question. I
tractor."
don't know.
It's funny.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It's just a dumb question, man. I was just joking around. Why can't they go past the rocks? But Terrence Mann obviously can be picked up, and so can Moonlight. And I think the question or the answer to that is because their souls needed to be taken to this place because it's kind of like some kind of gateway. All right. But once you go, you can't go
Yeah.
back.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know. I don't know. I mean, I think that sounds like good.
The movie doesn't really explain it,
Yeah.
but that's the best
Yeah.
explanation I can kind of come up with. So why, and we kind of talked about this earlier, why couldn't Mark see it and company see it? Is it because they have to believe it? And I think, yeah, I think you have to believe it.
Yeah, I do too.
We kind of
I think you
already
gotta be.
litigated
I
that a
think you
little
gotta
bit.
believe it. Um.
Yeah. Ray is just writing ease his pain in different patterns on a piece of paper. And this is in no way alarming to Annie.
Yeah. Maybe Annie's crazy. Maybe she. Maybe I mean,
Maybe a
because
little bit.
he's in real life, you'd be like, Mark, you
Oh,
gotta
in real
call
life,
somebody.
my yeah, in real life, I think Carly and Jess would be calling people and telling us to go to the doctor if we were doing that.
Yeah.
Why on earth would Terrence Mann go with Ray to a baseball game after their initial encounter? Again, I don't think Terrence Mann is alive. So I think
Yeah, he's got an interesting cadence about him too, because
I think
he
he's
was
got
obviously very
a
anti
restless.
talking to him at the beginning, and then kind of seemed okay at the game for a while. Like he seemed like he was having a good time, like not like a grump. But then Kevin Costner was like, "We can go." He's like, "All right, let's go." He gets up, he's ready to roll. Or maybe he's spooked because of the voice and stuff, or maybe he's not, I don't know. I don't know. Okay.
Well, and also like when they're buying the beer and hot dogs, right?
Yeah,
The people are Kevin Costner's talking to this guy, and the people see him. Can they see him, or is he just talking to no one?
right.
To them,
Bruce
the
Willis.
kids
I
behind the
mean, is
counter.
he? Does Terrence Mann order the food? Does he say a beer? I know he says a beer and a dog, but does he say that to Costner and then Costner says two?
Yeah, he says it to Costner, and Costner says
Okay,
it.
I don't know.
I believe. Ray decides to go to Minnesota, and Annie is just like, "Sure, you'll just have to explain it to me someday." After they're struggling, financially pretty heavily.
That would
Like
never happen.
she's the most supportive. Yeah, she's the most supportive wife ever, right?
Especially before like cell phones and stuff. No, never. I mean, you can't.
yeah. There's like some things that happen in this movie. I think Terrence Mann. We didn't really answer the question, but I think Terrence Mann goes to a baseball game after their initial encounter because I think he feels compelled to go. I feel like his spirit rather is calling him home,
All
right?
right.
So I think that's why he goes, and then Annie's just continuing her arc of being very very supportive.
I mean, to be fair, at this point,
Just
she's already. I
yeah,
mean,
at this
I mean,
point,
something weird is going on. He's been
yeah,
right or legitimate so far, with this, like, with the field and everything. So at this point, like, I mean, it's not like she doesn't believe magic shit's going on. You know what I mean? Like, she's seen
yeah.
it. So, like, there's he
She's
could
seen it
just
herself.
take it too far though. Maybe he could just be like, no, I heard the voice again. They said I gotta go play golf every weekend.
Yeah, no, I see. I don't see him doing that though, but that would be a funny subplot.
That's funny.
The voice is telling me I need to take a nap all day, so I'm just gonna stay in
The
here and take
voice
a
keeps
nap.
saying, if you play Madden, I
Yeah,
can't quite get. I gotta play Madden.
yeah. I got. The voice is telling me I gotta watch Lord of the Rings, all three films today. So I guess I gotta watch Lord of the Rings. Um, Ray goes back in time to 1972. Like, does he go back in time? Like how does that work?
Yeah, it's magic. I don't. I mean, I'm not sure. I mean, it's
Yeah,
just kind of an area of town turns into 1972, and then he turns around and walks back to 1989. It's interesting.
yeah, very magical. Um, is Terrence Mann dead? I think so.
Is there any significance to the his dad, like putting out the ad in the paper, and him needing to call his dad? I mean, that was just kind of slipped in there. I'm wondering if that gives any hints to anything.
I think he said he went missing, and notice he doesn't call him. And then also Mark is like, "Who is this supposed to be, Elvis?" And doesn't really look directly at him, nor does he have any communication with him.
Yeah, that's true. Uh,
He doesn't outright answer it, but I'm pretty sure he's dead.
yeah, I don't know. I don't know.
How is Annie not pissed at
Yeah, I
Mark?
think.
This dude yelled at their kid and then also pushed her off the edge. Now, granted, it was on an accident, but she's just kind of cool with it afterward. I'm sorry. I'm not going to be cool with that. I don't think anyone would
Yeah,
be.
he's also just a douchebag. I mean, I guess he's not. I
Yeah,
guess
he's a
you. I
dick.
mean, he's painted probably in a worse light than he is, because in real life, if you watch this happen to your sister and her husband was a nut, and the other option is no, there's baseball player ghosts on the field. Are you dumb? Are you not looking at them? Like, if that was real life, I mean, and it was like your sister about to go broke, when if they just made one or two decisions that they could, like, save their finances and family or something, and they won't do it. I mean, it paints him out to be this just jackass, but in real life, it's like, I mean, come on.
Well,
I mean,
see,
I get into
that
a
part I
scuffle and he pushes
understand.
her down, but it's
Yeah, that part I get. It's the pushing of the child down. Like, nah, dude. Like, fuck you. Like for forever.
it's
Like you're dead to me.
fine. Yeah.
Um, I don't know how Annie's still cool with him. I she's a better person than me. I suppose. I don't know. I think there's 10 things here, and we've kind of litigated all of them. I think to the characters, to the story, they kind of all make sense. Like, you have to suspend disbelief and buy into the supernatural elements of the
Yes.
movie. If you question it too much, you're just going to be questioning everything.
Right. I agree. I would say, I mean, my pick is going to be the Terrence Mann thing, and it's just going to be because that's such a big part of it, and I don't know the answer. And those are the types of things when I was talking about my score at the beginning
I would agree,
that
by the way,
ends up at
with that.
85. And I don't, and that's still a great score for a great movie. The reason that it's keeping me out of the 90s is because of these questions that like, and maybe I'm just overthinking it, and I'm not I'm missing the point maybe, but it's just like I don't quite understand the Terrence Mann thing. I don't quite understand the people coming, and maybe I just don't get it. Maybe I'm overthinking it. Maybe I'm looking too much into something that's not the point. I don't know, but it's just made me. There's just the screenplay just leaves me with a couple. I don't know. That's my logic for why it knocked down to an 85, which is still an amazing must see score. But that was my point when I was saying at the beginning. There's just a few questions that like made me curious. Now that doesn't really matter that much. All that did was knock my score down maybe 8 or 9 points or so from like top tier to fantastic, because the movie's still magical. And when you do suspend your disbelief, which I don't have a problem doing for most of it, like a great one is going back in time in 72. That is kind of weird, but like I just blur my eyes at that point and it doesn't bother me.
Well, the thing is, like, the movie itself is magical. If you explain it too much, excuse me, if you explain it too much, then it
Yeah, it
loses
loses the
that
faith
magic,
aspect of
right?
it too. That's just like
Yeah.
following your gut and your journey and the
S-
risk of it, because you don't want, I mean, there's no risk if they logic it up, you know.
Yeah, exactly. So, like, that to me, like, the fact that this movie has so many questions, like, revolving the magic of it all, is what makes the movie magical. That's why I lean toward like high 90s for me. It'd be like 95, 94, 93, somewhere in that percent. Like, again, I just saw the movie for the first time in, 20
Right.
years.
Me too.
So I would agree though. The stuff with Terrence Mann probably be the biggest. Does this make sense? But it adds to the film as well.
Yep.
So MVP, I think it's Annie for sure.
It wouldn't happen without Annie. That's for sure.
No, I think it's I
That's a
think it's
great
Annie.
pick. I mean,
It's
Annie's the one who's. I mean, she's really pulling all the strings there. I mean, if she makes one decision, it's just not happening. uh,
yeah, none of this is happening. If she puts her foot down, none of this is happening.
I'll go Ray
But
just
she
to
just is
round
free.
out the dynamic duo. But I agree. I mean, Annie's Ray followed his gut, but he wouldn't. I mean, Annie letting it happen made life much more
Yeah,
bearable for him, I'm sure.
she's the
Yeah.
backbone, and she's the thing that pushes him toward it.
Hmm.
Right? She's great. Um, why would you recommend this movie to people?
I think we've just said it. I think it speaks for itself. I mean, it's it's a great movie about baseball a little bit.
Yeah,
It's very kind of a product of its time in terms of late 80s, early 90s. It feels very you know I don't know, it's got an element of like the American dream to it. It feels very nostalgic, great vibes, and it's magical. And I mean that in more than just the fantasy aspect. I mean, it tells a story in such a cool way about something that all of us can relate to at some point in our lives, at least a little bit. That just, and it doesn't have to be baseball. Substitute baseball with anything that connected you with your father or your son or your mother or whatever whatever the story is to you. But it's a really special movie that'll if you've never seen it or haven't seen it in a long time, it could surprise you a little bit. There's there's a lot of power in it that can sometimes maybe even like kind of take your breath away in an emotional way. And it can make you feel the feels. I mean, it's just a special movie that
it certainly made me feel the feels.
yeah.
That's for sure. I was a mess at the end of this movie watching it. I couldn't have said it better, man. I think this movie's. If I had to just say one word, to describe this movie. It would be magical.
Yeah.
And that would be my pitch.
Same word you
know,
used for
should I watch
Wonka.
Field of Dreams? Magical. Yeah, and honestly, Wonka's freaking awesome too. I love Wonka. I love Wonka, but yeah, that's why I recommend this movie. Is it's magical.
Maybe it'll get put back in the rotation. I need to watch it more often than I did. Maybe I want to watch Bull Durham, but that's a change of pace too. That's a lot more baseball. That's a baseball movie.
Yeah, that's a change of pace pitcher, if you will, as opposed to about baseball, but different strokes for different folks.
You got anything else for us?
I'm all tapped out, man.
Well, that does it for this week. Thank you all so much again for listening. If you're hearing this on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, thanks for watching. If you're catching us on YouTube, be sure to like and subscribe for more movie talk from Ben and Walker. Let us know in the comments down below. What did you think of Field of Dreams? When's the first time you saw it? Have you seen it in a while? And what did it mean to you? And is Terrence Mann dead or alive? Or was alive and now what's up with Terrence Mann? But for now, this has been Ben and Walker, and we'll see you next time.